Hello, and welcome to Energy Secrets for Conscious Leaders. Today, my guest is Lama Tantrapa. Lama is the lineage holder of Tibetan shamanic Qigong and founder of the Academy of Qidao. He's authored a number of books and multimedia courses, as well as pioneering the profession of Qigong coaching. Welcome, Lama. Today, Lama and I are going to talk about the art of being in the flow, and we're also going to talk, of course, about shamanic Qigong and Qidao. Welcome.
Thank you for having me in this wonderful event, Catherine.
So I'd love to start, Lama, with talking about, flow and what you mean by the art of being in the flow.
Well, most of us have experienced events or instances of being in the flow at least once or twice in our lives. Some may be fortunate enough to experience it more often. And what does it feel like to be in the flow? Well, for example, athletes often refer to this as being in the zone, in the state of total focus, empowerment, and high performance. When you spend the least amount of time and energy and effort and achieve maximum results. That's the definition of high performance. This is a mental state. It's also a physical state. But most importantly, it's an energetic state. And that's exactly why the energy arts, such as Qigong, have a lot to do with being in the flow. As a matter of fact, I would venture to say that living a life in the flow is basically the holy grail of Qigong, because who wants to learn Qigong style just for the sake of learning another form or another style of Qigong? We want to learn how to live a Qigong lifestyle. And one of the obvious benefits of doing that is learning how to live our lives more in the flow, with less struggle, with less resistance, when we basically realize that if we pay attention to the flow, we can enjoy the ride a lot better than struggling against the flow or pedaling against the waves, so to speak. I often use this metaphor of surfing. I used to live in Hawaii and in Guam and other places like that where I learned how to surf. And surfing is the perfect metaphor for navigating the swells and waves in the ocean of life. You basically learn to pay attention to the waves, and then you align your movement in such a way that the wave carries you. So you don't have to constantly pedal to gain momentum. You gain enough momentum to catch the wave, and then your job is to maintain dynamic balance so that you don't fall off the surfboard.
Lovely, lovely metaphor. Let's go from there then, from the flow state to Qigong, because you mentioned that, as you see it, Qigong is one way to be in the flow state or to increase the amount of time we're in the flow state.
It's one of the ways. Obviously, there are a number of different ways. People do a number of different things to facilitate flow. Anything from doing some breathing practices to meditation. Some people experience being in the flow as a result of taking psychedelics. Some people experience being in the flow as a result of dream practices. And as a matter of fact, I do teach and practice the art of Tibetan dream yoga, which is an excellent way to facilitate being in the flow as well. But energy arts such as Qigong really provide us the golden key to unlock the doors of flow. Why? Well, because if you think about it, we often talk about the human being having a body and a mind. And this kind of Cartesian dualism overlooks the most important aspect of human being, that keeps the mind and body together in one living organism. It's the life force. It's like the two sides of the coin, the proverbial coin that has the tails and the heads. So maybe the tails represent the body, heads represent the mind. what we need to learn is how to focus our attention on the gold that this coin is made of, because that's the essence of what we're dealing with. We learn how to pay attention to the gold, the energy that keeps the two sides of that coin, the mind and body, together. And that energy is something that gives us the ability to change our perspective on life, to develop greater efficiency or efficacy in our actions. But most importantly, it's everything that the universe is made of. And so we learn how to be in harmony and in flow of energy in the universe. And that's the biggest game in town as far as I'm concerned.
I like that, the biggest game in town. Yeah. Would you like to say more about that?
Well, of course. The idea of a universe having certain flow to it is not novel.
Mm-hmm.
And the ancient Chinese philosophy of Taoism, for example, talks about the Tao, the flow of things. Well, wait a moment. If we talk about the flow of things, we're talking about the flow. Life has certain flow to it. We learn how to notice the flow of things, how to notice the smaller as well as bigger aspects of it. So, for example, if a lot of people are moving from one place to another place, well, there is a certain flow to it. A lot of people are stampeding or moving. If we go against that flow, obviously we will have to struggle against a big crowd. But it may also be a minute experience of flow. For example, just everyday movements or movements in a particular context. For example, Qigong practice. Why is it in Qigong people would do this, for instance, or in Tai Chi, opening moves? Mm-hmm. Is this the only way to open the Tai Chi form? Of course not. Well, what works for one person may not work for another person. So let's actually find out authentically what would be the most efficient and effective way to get started, for example, with this particular form or practice. And then we discover that we bump against values. There are different values associated with different people, different nations, different cultures. And the value of authenticity wasn't particularly high priority value in Chinese culture, as far as I'm concerned. And so they didn't really value everybody learning how to be authentic in their practice of Tai Chi or Qigong. So if everyone does it in the exact same way, that was considered really good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But that actually misses the point of learning how to be in the flow, because everybody's flow is unique and different. And if we do everything the exact same way that everyone else does things, we actually are not authentic. Basically, we just follow the crowd. What distinguishes leaders is that they don't just follow the crowd, they lead the crowd, or they develop certain ways of being that gives them an advantage over everyone else, so they can do things with greater quality or greater proficiency or greater results. And that makes them stand out so that people would like more of similar things. For example, mm-hmm. If you are a leader, let's say in the context of athletics, well, if you are a really good athlete, people would like to learn how you achieve what you managed to achieve. And if you have certain secrets or certain tricks of the trade and you're willing to share them with others, that creates the position of leadership for you. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, unfortunately, that's not something that most leaders in the world do when they find themselves in a position of leadership. They don't just share the tricks of the trade and help people become more empowered, just like themselves. Basically, mm-hmm. leadership often is considered a position of authority. When a leader tells other people what to do and how to do things, but it's not empowering. And so it basically doesn't breed the next generation of leaders. It just simply breeds compliance. And if somebody's not in compliance, well, they're not a good follower. So who wants to have this kind of followers? So leaders basically don't want to work with people who are authentic. And so this is the challenge in leadership.
I'm really interested in what you're saying. There are a couple of points from that. One, the first point you made about authenticity and that maybe not being so present in Chinese culture and everybody doing the same thing. And of course, often maybe that's what Westerners see. If they see pictures or videos of people doing practices like Qigong or Tai Chi, they see large numbers of people in the parks, maybe in China, all doing the same thing. So maybe that is one thing people, don't relate it to, leadership in the West. So I'm really interested in that point that you're saying, that for you, it's about, the Qigong practice can support a person in finding their own authenticity. And then the other point, which I would like to explore further with you, was that very point you just made about, leadership is about empowering others. And a lot of people, as I've been interviewing speakers for this series, many of the speakers have talked about, new ways of leading that are coming through, with the younger generations, but also just because of the changing times that we live in and the demands that we're facing require different types of leadership. So I would love to hear about, the Qigong's contribution there.
Well, if you think about it, in order for a person to be a leader, an effective leader at that, ideally that person would be an empowered individual. Who wants to follow a disempowered leader, right? And empowerment is not just a mental state, which of course it is, but it also is a state of physical wellness and well-being. Sense of authenticity goes hand in hand with sense of empowerment. I would even venture to say that mastery goes hand in hand with empowerment too. And by mastery, I don't mean just achievement of a pinnacle of one's personal development, because there is no such pinnacle. Mastery is a process, not a destination. It's a journey of mastery that we are on. And each and every step along the way, hopefully we learn how to become more and more masterful. So it's a process of mastering whatever we are learning or trying to master. And first and foremost, we're mastering ourselves. It's a self-mastery. And so that's one of the things about Qigong that distinguishes it from a lot of other methods or traditions, is that there are actually such people as Qigong masters. I've been interviewing many of them for my talk show, The Secrets of Qigong Masters, for over a decade. And one of the things that I can say is that nobody teaches how to become a Qigong master. Basically, masters are those people who violated the rules. The rules are such that if you study anything, Qigong or Tai Chi or yoga or any martial art or most other disciplines, you considered a good student if you do what your teacher told you to do and you replicate whatever teacher does as close to the way the teacher does it as possible. Then you're considered a good student, you may get promoted, given some additional teachings. If you don't do it the way the teacher does it, or you deviate in some other ways, well, you're a deviant, you're not good a student, and you're not going to get promoted, and teachers don't like having students like that. But if you think about it, most masters, for example, in Qigong, are known for creating a new style or a new form or creating a new school. Why did they create a new form? Was the old one that was taught to them by their teacher not good enough? They were not encouraged to create new forms. Nobody says, hey, you know what? Today, the subject of our lesson is to create a new Qigong form. No, nobody teaches that. So they basically had to become renegades. They had to go against the rules to basically overcome their own indoctrination and decide, you know what I learned from my master was really nice, but something seems to be working even better if I do it this way.
Mm-hmm.
So this kind of exploration and experimentation and creativity is what leads to mastery. But that's not what's being taught. So I basically had to say, you know, this is not good enough. Whatever we see in Qigong industry is deficient. Nobody is actually being taught how to become a Qigong master. So everybody is just taught how to become a follower.
And I guess we could say, you know, we can equate Qigong master with leader, or the way we're talking about leadership. If we say, you know, to say to the audience, the words, at least in my understanding, Qigong is very basic level, means energy work.
Yeah.
And, you know, I like very much you talking about self-mastery, because, you know, to me, that would be what we would want in leadership. And, you know, right before we started talking, you and I were speaking about, you know, the importance of embodiment for leaders.
Yes.
And to me, it's like, you know, or maybe that's one of the things that needs to be considered for the modern leader, the leader of the future, is about energy mastery, which was one of the reasons why I named the series as it is, Energy Secrets. For me, very much, I would like to see greater levels of energy mastery in leaders, and people considering that that's an important thing to have knowledge about and to embody.
Exactly. And that's one of the secrets of energy mastery that can be very directly applied to becoming a successful leader. Mm-hmm. Learning how to be in the flow so that when you are performing your leadership duties, you do that with the greatest sense of cohesion, authenticity, and integrity. Those people who operate at that level become better leaders. People want to follow them because they want to be more like them, because they emanate the energy of confidence, integrity. They are walking the talk. That is very important, because nobody wants to follow those who don't walk the talk, right? Mm-hmm. Now, what happens is that we learn how to do this physically. Don't only mentally try to become a good leader, but actually we learn how to physically embody that kind of leadership style. That's where mastery comes in handy, because mastery is not just a skill that we develop on theoretical level, but it has to be applied and embodied. And another thing that we also develop is discernment. And discernment, again, is not a mental exercise. It's actually an energy practice, because it's based on sense of energy resonance. When we discern things, we basically can tell what we resonate with more, what we resonate with less. It's not just black and white. It's not just good and bad. There are different degrees of resonance, and we have the ability to discern which of the things that we focus on we resonate more with or less with, and it's all relative. And so that gives us the ability to make more intelligent decisions than the decisions based on the preconceived ideas of what's right and what's wrong, mm-hmm. which is how most people make their decisions. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, I believe that in the big scheme of things, that's how humankind can overcome the continuous cycle of suffering. The humankind can overcome suffering by overcoming that black and white way of perceiving things as just good and bad. if we develop the ability to discern on the energetic level between different things, different options, different courses of action, we will be able to experience much more authenticity, much more flow, because when you resonate with something and you move in that direction, you experience greater ease of movement. You enjoy the experience much more. It's like listening to music, for example. If you like listening to music of certain type, you can probably do that for a long time, maybe for hours. And you feel your body is relaxing and easier to breathe. It becomes easier to breathe. You basically are enjoying the experience. You may even want to dance to it. If that's the kind of music that moves your body to dance, it means that you're not tense, because tension is frozen movement. So that's what happens when we, for example, listen to music that we don't care about or can't stand. If you hear a piece of music that you can't stand, what does it make you feel?
Yeah, as you say, tense or
You're cringing.
frustrated. Yes.
Yeah, you can't wait to turn it off.
Yeah, you, as you say, the physical reaction leads to the emotional and then the mental. So yeah, I mean, and I think, you know, when we're talking about, you know, these points that you're making about Qigong practice, maybe one way to summarize is to say, you know, it's these physical practices that bring us literally into the body, help to actually shut off the mind that tends to sort of separate into right and wrong, good and bad, all the dualities. And it's that helps us to remain in the flow state for longer.
Well, let me clarify.
Okay.
Mind is a precious thing, and the last thing I want to do is to shut it off.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying that thinking isn't good. We need thinking.
Well, mind is capable of not only thinking, it also is capable of discerning. And that's what I'm trying to suggest, that we can learn how to not just think, not just recognize good and bad, because this is very low level thinking, very low level mental functioning. We also learn how to identify patterns and connect the dots between cause and effect. Connecting the dots between cause and effect gives us the ability to act with recognition of what's going to cause what. In other words, act on purpose. As a matter of fact, if Buddha Shakyamuni was right, ignorance is the number one cause of suffering. Well, ignorance of what? Ignorance of the law of karma, the law of cause and effect. In other words, if we become less ignorant as to cause and effect, or become more aware of how things connect on a causal level, then we actually can live life free of suffering. That's what we call nirvana. Who wouldn't want that, right?
Exactly.
Now, that's something that a great leader would be able to offer to people who he or she aspires to lead. In other words, the leadership needs to tap into people's needs, and even more importantly, their values. Now, that's something that I'm not the first person to talk about. Leadership needs to be about values, but then we actually need to figure out how to embody these values so that we walk the talk, and how to align our values with our actions, or vice versa, rather, align our actions with our values, so that we feel like we act on purpose. And when we act this way, our highest priority values get satisfied, so we become happy campers. If we act in some other way where our maybe low priority values get satisfied, or higher priority values remain unfulfilled, that's not going to lead to much happiness, right? And so that, unfortunately, is what's missing if we don't have discernment. That's one of the reasons why we're talking about needing to develop this awareness of energy resonance that leads to both discernment, state of flow, and ability to act with the least amount of effort and get maximum results.
Thank you. I'd love you just to repeat that last sentence again, because I think that's such an important point. Those three things: discernment,
Flow,
flow, and what was the third?
and maximum efficacy,
Yeah.
getting maximum results by spending least amount of effort and energy. So basically, if you want me to repeat that sentence, it goes like this. We need to develop energy awareness as leaders or as ordinary human beings. We need to develop energy awareness so that we can exercise discernment based on energy resonance. We can also learn how to be in the flow, because when we feel energy resonance and we actually follow the flow of energy, by definition, we are in the flow. And when we do that, we also achieve greatest results while spending least amount of energy and effort, which is definition of peak performance.
Thank you.
And that is something that basically becomes automatic when we study the art of being in the flow. It's almost like you don't even have to work hard to achieve that, because that's what we're learning, how to stop struggling against the flow. Working hard often is associated with working too much because we are struggling against the flow. And start working smart, paying attention to where the flow is going and navigating it. You don't just completely surrender and just go where the wind blows, which is what we often mean by going with the flow. But being in the flow means you can navigate the flow. So you still can have your dreams and aspirations that you would like to manifest, but you don't do that by pushing against the flow, thinking that if I just work hard enough, I will get what I want. We actually learn how to use the energy of flow to propel us in the direction of our dreams. And manifesting and living our dreams becomes a lot easier and effortless, or at least much less painful and causes less suffering to others, if we feel the flow and learn how to be in it. So basically, there are a lot of pros and very few, if any, cons to learning how to be in the flow. The question is then, how do you get started, right?
Yes, how do you get started?
Yes, so the practical steps that allow us to learn how to be in the flow are actually really simple. We learn how to pay attention to our breath, not to change the breathing according to some preconceived ideas of how breathing should be. Instead of doing breathing exercises or controlling breath according to certain ideas of how breathing should be done, we can actually use the breath and other physiological functions in the human body as biofeedback mechanisms. In other words, we just talked about music, right? Well, if you listen to music and it makes you cringe, well, obviously it affects your breath. If you notice, okay, my breathing becomes really shallow and rapid and stressed, well, let's make a mental note that is associated with what I'm focusing on right now, what I'm experiencing. Now, what if I change my focus of attention? What if I bring my attention to something else, or listen to a different type of music, for example? For the sake of exercise or in discernment, we can experiment with a variety of things and check, well, how does this affect my breath? How does that affect my breath? And we develop this sense of discernment based on a very identifiable physiological biofeedback. It's totally no nonsense. It's non-dogmatic. We trust that the body is going to tell us what we resonate with and what we don't. Perhaps better than we can tell ourselves mentally, because we may have, like I said, all kinds of preconceived ideas or assumptions. If we remove the bias and just simply pay attention to the physiological biofeedback mechanism that is baked into our system, we can develop a sense of discernment and energy resonance. Now, the next step that would need to follow the first one would be to learn how to move in such a way that also is in alignment with this type of breathing that we experience when we are more in the flow. In other words, we develop a different culture of movement, more harmonious culture of movement. That is something you can see in a great Qigong or Tai Chi masters or masters of other disciplines who sometimes experience the flow at will, and they can demonstrate what it's like to be in the flow through movement or through other means. We learn how to develop a harmonious culture of movement step by step, just like learning a foreign language. You know, first we need to learn the alphabet of that language. Otherwise, these little curly cues that you're looking at may not make any sense if it's an alphabet that you're not familiar with. So we learn how to identify certain principles of this new culture of movement for us. And we develop the full alphabet as we understand more and more of these principles. So then we can start putting these letters into words. And as you put a few letters into words, some of them will make sense, some of them won't. So we basically need to also use our discernment to identify which of the principles work better together. Of course, I could just tell you, but I don't want to tell you. I want you to reinvent the wheel. That's the difference between coaching versus teaching. Teaching just kind of downloads the information to students' minds, and the student just needs to memorize it. As opposed to coaching actually invites you to reinvent the wheel, as it were, but you'll never forget how the wheel works if you reinvented it. Which means you will be able to assimilate this knowledge a lot deeper and apply it when necessary. And then with a number of words that you figured out how to compose out of letters, you develop vocabulary. So you may be able to actually start putting together some sentences, which will also require understanding some grammar and syntax, but with practice, you will be able to actually communicate using that language. And with practice, you'll become more fluent at it. That's the art of being in a flow in a nutshell. It's quite different from the way that most people learn Qigong, by the way, because if you look at how most people view the study of Qigong, most people think of it as learning how to do some forms.
Yes.
Well, I don't do forms. I don't teach forms. I don't practice forms. Forms are like poetry in the foreign language. Yes, it may look nice. You may memorize this poem by heart and recite it day in and day out. You may even put it to music and sing it. You may even dance to it. But is it going to make you fluent in that language if you know just that poem? I doubt it.
That's true. So would you like to tell us what shamanic Qigong is? Because I'm sure other people other than me would love to know what that is. And some people's interest may have perked up just now when you said you don't teach forms, because that's an unusual statement when you're talking about Qigong and Tai Chi. I think many people would associate that with learning forms. So I'd love to know a little bit more about what shamanic Qigong is before we end. And in the process, please do tell the audience, a little bit about, what you offer at your academy, and also the free gift that you have for them today.
Certainly. Well, shamanism is the most ancient spiritual tradition known to humankind, as far as I know. It's been around for many, many millennia, and it predates any organized religions. When we look at various styles of Qigong or Tai Chi or similar disciplines, in a sense, there is a lot of parallels between those and organized religions, meaning there's a certain doctrine or certain teaching that's been disseminated by the master, just like the prophets who created those religions disseminated their teachings. And the prophets might have had some amazing wisdom or capabilities. Do their followers develop the same wisdom and capabilities? By and large, they don't. Well, similarly, if the teachers of Qigong or related disciplines are so much greater than their students, that means that over time, over the course of many generations, the quality of teachings dwindles. Basically, what we end up with after several millennia is a very low level skill. Why is that? Because everybody is just trying to emulate the teachers. And if the teachers do not help students become masters, that means a very small percentage of the students actually become masters. The ones that are renegades that I mentioned, they basically violate the rules or expectations that they will just do what they've been taught. Shamanic Qigong does not impose this type of dogmatic approach. Instead, it inspires the student to learn, to discover for themselves certain principles. Of course, I could just tell you these principles, like I said, but I would much rather engage you in the process of discovering for yourself, testing these principles, and developing the ability to apply these principles as in your daily life at will. Then what Shamanic Qigong has to offer is a number of different applications in various spheres of life. You know, the history of Qigong is long. It's predates any organized religions. People have been doing energy arts way before organized religions came about, whether it's in the East or in the West. Well, before organized religions, people were doing Shamanic Qigong. Once Buddhism came online, basically after Buddha Shakyamuni lived in India 2,500 years ago, the followers of his teachings basically developed Buddhist Qigong, dedicated to spiritual awakening or enlightenment. For example, Taoists, the people who followed the teachings of Lao Tzu, who also lived about the same time ago in China, developed Taoist Qigong, which is dedicated to attainment of immortality, purportedly, or at least longevity and wellness. Well, that's great. What else? For example, at the same time as Lao Tzu lived in China, Confucius lived there too. And his followers developed Confucius Qigong, that is dedicated more to creating greater cohesion and harmony within society, family, between individuals. Now, for example, in Tibet, there is Tantric Qigong. Just like Tibetan Buddhism is often referred to as Tantric Buddhism, they basically developed the methodology of energy arts dedicated to creating mutually empowering and enlightening relationships. Also, of course, there is martial arts Qigong, dedicated to self-defense and protection of others, as well as medical, or as I prefer to call it, therapeutic Qigong, that basically is dedicated to healing and prevention of diseases. But all of these are just branches on the big tree of Qigong. As a matter of fact, if I just turn around, and you can see on the back of my shirt.
Oh, lovely.
There is a Qigong tree. From the root, which is Shamanic Qigong.
Right.
The branches grew into different directions. So there are different schools of Qigong dedicated to different objectives of this art. What Shamanic Qigong teaches allows us to achieve those objectives, but not by striving for the fruits on the branches of the tree, rather going to the roots of the tree, to the true essence of the energy arts, learning how to really relate to everything as energy, how to embody this energy awareness, how to develop discernment based on it, and how to experience the sense of flow at will. When we develop the ability to be in a flow on demand, that gives us an opportunity to live our lives in the flow. So we don't just experience it once in the blue moon and we'll always remember it as like a high peak experience. We actually learn how to live this way on a regular basis. Now that is what I call the path of mastery. I was talking about how we don't just consider mastery as a destination somewhere at the end of the long journey, which would be the pinnacle of our achievement. We realize that we are on the path of mastery. That's another distinction between shamanic Qigong as opposed to the majority of other styles, that we don't just put the masters on the pedestal and think that they have achieved some amazing level of mastery that is unattainable to us. We realize that the masters are also working on themselves. As a matter of fact, I work on myself all the time. All the masters that I interviewed on my talk show, The Secrets of Qigong Masters, contend that they have lots of room for improvement.
Yeah.
That means that mastery becomes a journey. Well, we need to know how to be on this path. And so we basically learn how to identify what the path of mastery is, how to step on it, how to travel down this path. And if we fall off this path, well, how to get back on it.
Thank you for that. I think that's really lovely information. And as you say, whether you want to use the word master or leader, you could sort of interchange those terms. Would you like to tell the audience about your free gift to them and how they can contact you or join your academy if they would like to learn shamanic Qigong? And also, I know we've got whole areas of things that you do that we didn't touch because there's the whole conversation about dream yoga as well. So maybe we'll have to do that one another time.
Certainly. Well, as a matter of fact, speaking of dream yoga, the meditation CD that I recorded a few years back called Qidao Initiation got turned into an online course. Nowadays, not many people buy CDs anymore. So we actually have this as a free gift, an online course based on the meditation album called Qidao Initiation. It includes a number of meditations in the tradition of Qidao that also can help with developing a certain basic level skills related to Tibetan dream yoga, because Tibetan shamanic Qigong and dream yoga go hand in hand in many cases. I would say they dovetail perfectly. And when you download this meditations or listen to them through our online course, obviously I would want you not to listen to them passively, but to actually integrate the skill that they are invited to do, listen to them as an active participant, as a practitioner. Those are guided meditations. So as you receive this guidance, it's not a dogma and something that will inspire you to get creative. In some instances, for example, let's say a standing meditation. Well, I introduced the standing meditation, lead you through a guided meditation dedicated to this particular practice, called Zhong in Chinese. But then I also mentioned that many of us experience meditation spontaneously in a variety of different scenarios. For example, taking a shower. Often people enter into altered states. Some people start singing. Some people just feel really blissed out when they're taking a shower. You're naked, you're standing underwater, cleansing yourself, you're giving yourself attention. Where attention goes, energy flows. As they say in Chinese, yi dao, qi dao. Well, when you give yourself attention, You give yourself energy. You create a recycling of the energy in your own system. That creates massive circulation of qi in your body, which is the key to self-empowerment. If you do this consciously, you can benefit from it. So every time you're taking a shower, all of a sudden becomes a massive empowerment event. And it's just one of many examples of how we can turn simple and very obvious things that happen to us every day into instances that allow us to experience much more empowerment in daily life, develop a sense of gratitude for those instances, and capitalize on them more and more every time. So basically, these type of approach to meditation, this type of approach to development energy awareness is something unique and different from any other style that I know of. And I know many different styles of Qigong. This is something that you will be able to begin your journey with by simply listening to this meditation CD or meditation online course called Qidao Initiation, following the link that we have in the description of our interview. If you want to dive deeper, of course, Academy of Qidao has a lot of other online courses to offer. I've produced about 12 other online courses. Plus also we have certification programs for people who want to become Qidao practitioners. We have a number of different levels of certification, basic, intermediate, advanced levels. When you graduate from advanced level of training, you already will be probably at the top 1% of Qigong practitioners in the world in terms of your energy skills and abilities. But let's not stop there. We also have an apprenticeship program, which is a year-long program that people are invited. It's by invitation only from those who graduated from the advanced program. And then you can actually learn not only how to deepen your own personal development as a Qidao practitioner, but also how to help other people. You learn how to become a certified Qigong coach. So that's basically the path for those of us who feel like we are leaders. We want to develop our skills and abilities not only for our own sake, but also to help other people live their lives more in the flow.
Thank you so much. That's a wonderful free gift. And I think this interview has been rich with information for leaders about, shamanic Qigong and managing their energy and living in the flow state more of the time. So thank you so much, Lama.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much, Catherine, for inviting me to share what I had to share.
Thank you.